Hello everybody. Yes, it is Monday the 19th of November. Sorry, just adjusting the tripod there. Yes, I didn't record on Saturday. Well, I'll come to that in a moment. So, hello, my name is Jared, or Peter, or Boniface. I am a crocheter and knitter, spinner, weaver, want to be spinner, and anything really related to the fibre arts I'm really quite interested in. I live in Abingdon-on-Thames, which is a small town. Hello, Toby. It's a small town south of Oxford, in Oxfordshire in the southeast of England. I live with my two cats, Toby and Bunty, who are both 8.5 years old. And I have a flatmate, Andy, and occasionally his two sons, Thomas and Samuel, come and stay with us. And I work for a local bus company. I used to be a bus driver, but I now look after other parts of the company instead. And I used to be a Benedictine monk for 12 years. So that's basically the potted life history. I could go on. I'm one of 7 children. I'm the middle one of 7 children. I have 10 nieces and nephews and 10 great nieces and nephews. My family is from the northwest of England, from Salford, which is a city just to the northwest of the city of Manchester, which you've probably heard of. And I support Manchester United Football Club. Is there anything else? Well, anything else that might crop up. So, welcome. You're very welcome. Welcome back to those of you who have been regular viewers, and welcome to any first-time viewers. I hope that you enjoy spending a little bit of time with me today, and if you do, please don't forget to click subscribe and you'll be reminded when a new video is uploaded. I tend to record on a weekly basis, but there have been issues over the last 2 weeks which meant that I didn't. Technical issues rather than practical ones. Just make sure, yes it is. Sorry, it just reminded me to double check that the cable was properly in. So, what to begin with? Well, let's talk about the elephant in the room. You may have noticed what I'm wearing. I have finished my Tin Can Knits Flax pullover. The wool I used is Lion brand and is the fisherman's wool, which is this light brown, dark brown twill wool. It's 100% virgin wool and still contains some of the lanolin from the sheep shearing process. It's not been thoroughly washed out. It was a really lovely wool to use. In fact, these are 8-ounce balls, skeins. I don't actually know what they are really. They're not quite the normal skein and they're not quite the normal ball, but anyway, they're 8 ounces, which is approximately, yes, is 225 grams, thereabouts. And I used 2, and as you can see, a little bit of the third. So I actually bought 4 of these. I was expecting to use, because the meterage is 425 meters in a single skein of yarn, and the pattern told me to expect to use about 1600. So I bought 4 of them to be safe, and I used less than 2.5. So I'm quite pleased because it means I've got all this lovely wool to use on some other project, and I'll probably make a hat and some mittens perhaps out of this. I made the extra large size, and it's a Tin Can Knits pullover. It is a top-down single construction pullover. So you make the you cast on at the collar, you make down to the yoke, you separate out and put the sleeve stitches onto a stitch holder on each side, and then knit the body, and then come back and knit the sleeves. And you may be able to see that there is a garter stitch panel in the sleeve that runs from the cuff all the way up to the neck. I used a tubular cast on at the neck, and I just made a loose cast off at the sleeves. And I haven't washed and blocked this yet. I finished it literally on Saturday. And I haven't told anybody that I'd finished it because I wanted you to be the first people to know that I'd done it. I'm really pleased, even at this stage, with the fit. I left it so that it will grow a little bit, because being a top-down construction means, hello Bunty, it means that there are no seams along the arms or along the side, which means that there's no structure So everything is hanging off the shoulders, basically. And so clearly the full weight of this sweater is being borne by the shoulders, so it will stretch down and it will stretch out, and it will be a nice, lovely, it will be a snuggle jumper, if you like. Something that I'll be able to wear. And I mean, I can tell you, I've got the door open. It's so warm, this jumper, that I've actually got the door open while I'm podcasting. I'm going to wear it throughout, so excuse me if I sometimes look a little bit flushed, but it's not particularly warm outside, but it's not particularly cold today. It has been, sorry, I've got cat hairs in my mouth. It has been very cold in the last week. We've had frost on a couple of mornings, but it's still very mild for late November. I mean, bearing in mind it is now the second half of November, and we are still, it's a bit grey, it's a bit rainy, which you kind of expect in the winter, but it certainly isn't cold. The heating has been on, but it's remarkably mild out there. So anyway, there we are. I just wanted to, sorry, I should just finish with this. So this is the Tin Can Knits Flax. It's part of their Simple collection. You can go to their website and download the pattern for free. It's also available via Ravelry. And they size it from newborn baby all the way up to 4 times extra large. So I use the extra large measurements because I like it to be loose. I can fit a large jumper, but I prefer the extra large. Just, I don't like things gripping me. So I made it slightly bigger than I needed to. I'm kind of halfway between the two sizes, I guess. And I followed their measurements to the letter. It's not perfect. There are a couple of stitches that I dropped that I had to pick up, but I'm very happy with the overall effect. I love the colouring that twill yarn gives to the thing. It's beautifully squishy and soft. I can't wait to wash it in the Euclan soak, which will give it that lovely lavender fragrance as well. I have a special rack that I'll be able to dry it flat because it is 100% wool, so it does need to be lay out flat in order to dry. But I can honestly say I guess it took me, if I were to just say take the time it took me to do the actual knitting, it probably took me about 3 weeks from beginning to end. It's taken me about 3 months because I haven't been knitting it all the time, but in terms of the actual knitting I did, it was very quick. It was a simple stockinette, basically all the way, apart from this panel. Every other row you purl, because you're knitting in the round. If you knit every round, then it would be stockinette. So for the sleeves, you just purl on one of the 3 double pointed needles that I used for the sleeves, and you get this lovely panel which goes, as I say, all the way down both sleeves, and it just gives it enough interest. I think the wool choice was perfect for the pattern. It's quite a fussy effect that the twill wool has. So, sorry, Andy's just got up. He's been doing lates the last couple of days, well, yesterday, so he doesn't get in till about 3 o'clock, so it's about, well, it's mid-morning, it's about 10 o'clock now, so he's just got up. So if you hear any noises in the background, it's just him making a cup of tea and that kind of thing. But I think with the patterning that you get from this wool, it would have been too much to have had cables and that kind of thing. I think you'd have lost the complexity of the pattern in the patterning of the wool itself. So it was a nice simple stitch, and I'm really, really pleased with it. So excuse me a second, I'm just going to have a drink. I will tell you what the drink is in just a moment, but if you excuse me a second. You may notice I'm a bit nasally. I don't have a cold, there's some allergies around. I think I've got a lot of cat hair all over me at the moment, so there's a bit of a sniffle going on, but it's nothing serious. And for those of you who have been concerned that I've been unwell a couple of weeks, I think I got to the bottom of what was wrong. And as ever, it was only as I came out of being unwell that I realised what was wrong. I've had quite a bad toothache on both the upper and lower jaw on this side, which I don't have toothache normally, so it's quite unusual. And before that, I had a really great difficulty hearing in this ear. Now, my hearing in this ear has always been slightly less than my hearing in that ear anyway, and my hearing is getting worse as I get older, which is just one of those things, and, you know, at some point I'll probably need hearing aids, but I'm not there yet. But over the last 3 or 4 days, I've had a crackling in the back of the ear, and the deafness has lifted somewhat, and the pain in my top and bottom jaw has lessened somewhat, and I feel a lot less tired. So I rather suspect I probably had some kind of ear or sinus infection, which has now sorted itself out and has cleared, and that was what was leading me to be so sleepy so much of the time, and all the other feeling under the weather and not feeling like doing very much. So I'm feeling a lot better now, so I don't know whether that it is just that, but it seems to be that as that has got better, the issues that I previously had have disappeared. So that's good. So I think that's everything I've finished, and I've not done anything significantly more on the works in progress, so I won't talk about any of those right now. But I think, if I may be so bold, I would like to talk about a couple of finished objects that Wendy has completed, because I think they're stunning. And the first is a Christmas table runner that she's made for her mother, and I'll put a picture of it in here as I talk about it. And you'll notice from the construction it's a sequence of squares that have been cut out and then sewn together, but in order to create a diagonal lozenge shape going across. And I didn't know what I knew she was making a table runner for her mother, which is what she's made. But she asked me to go with her to Mason's, the fabric shop, not the wool shop, although we did go to the wool shop afterwards, but that's another story, to help her choose 3 fabrics that would go together. And I couldn't really visualize in the shop what she was describing, but we eventually, we went through a number of variations of the fabrics, but we eventually came across these 3. And I think they work quite well together, because the red that is in the foreground of the stars is the same red that's in the background of the plants. And I just felt that we did toy with the idea of having a green fabric, but the green fabric was too much like the green that's in the foreground of the plants, and so it was very, very green, and it just didn't quite sit right. And the plain cream fabric that you'll see in the background has a golden thread running through it. So in natural light, you actually get quite a sheen of gold coming off there, which matches the gold that's in the other 2 fabrics. So overall, it looks fabulous. I have to say, it really does look incredibly good. And I think her mother is going to be delighted with it. And she is she made these cushions, which I got for my birthday, as you know, and these are lovely cushions as well. She's a very talented sewer. She has a lovely studio as well, which I'm very, very envious of, but there we go. It's unfortunately I have Andy sleeps in what would be my studio, so you know, that's life. Excuse me. So she's going to kill both Bob and me for this. The other finished object is a beautiful cardigan, and I'll put in a picture of the cardigan here so you can see it. Bob bought her this cardigan for her birthday, and just bought her the cardigan. We went to, I think, Hobbycraft. I think it was Hobbycraft, and he came out saying that he'd bought a cardigan for her, and in fact what he'd done was bought the wool and bought the pattern, and she was having to make it herself. Well, in fact, the pattern she originally was going to make, there seemed to be something wrong with the pattern, and she just couldn't get to grips with it, and it wasn't, I don't think it was going to be as good as the finished object that she ended up with. But I'm going to put in another picture here that Bob sent me that Wendy doesn't know about, and there it is. And this is Wendy modelling the cardigan, and it's a lovely jacket style cardigan with 2 big pockets, one on either side, and I just love the detail and the colouring in the yarn, with the flecks of colour. So it's not a single colour yarn. But unlike with this, where this would have been too fussy for the cabling to stand out, I think it really helps to accentuate the cabling in this. I love the colours anyway, and I think they look really good on her, and I'm really, really impressed with the finished item. So I just wanted to share that, because Wendy tends to hide her light under a bushel, but she's a very talented crafter in her own right, and I'm trying so hard to get her to agree to appear with me on this video, and this is the next best thing. She will be so annoyed. She doesn't know that Bob sent me that picture of her wearing the cardigan, and she doesn't know I'm putting it in here. So technically this is, you know, very mean on my part, but Bob, Wendy and I are going to IKEA in Reading tomorrow, so she will probably have seen this video by then, so I think we may well be towed off in the morning. But anyway, that's life. So I just wanted to share my talented friend's very, very good finished objects. So sorry, Wendy, but blame Bob. If he hadn't sent me the picture, I couldn't have used it. I did twist his arm, but that's not neither here nor there. So I think now I'll move on to acquisitions. So the first acquisition was actually the drink that I'm drinking, which is Twining's gingerbread tea. The ingredients are going to be here somewhere. And see, Bob, I've remembered to put my glasses on to do this, but now I can't see the actual ingredients. Oh, there we are. Green tea, ginger root, natural flavouring. Doesn't say what the natural flavouring is, just that there is natural flavouring. I cannot describe to you, so this is Twining's gingerbread tea. I cannot describe to you the sensation. This is like liquid gingerbread. This tastes exactly like my gingerbread does. I am staggered by this. Excuse me. It's not ginger tea. There is something in the background that makes it taste of gingerbread. And I don't know what the background flavour is, because it doesn't tell me. But I love ginger tea anyway, but this gingerbread, it has that sense of the butter and the flour and the cloves that I use in my gingerbread. But I don't know how they've managed to turn it into... It's staggering. I mean, it really is delicious. Excuse me. And this was an acquisition which was a very generous gift from one of my viewers. I'm not going to say who. I will be thanking them personally anyway, by message. But it was accompanied by a bar of mint aero. And as you know, as I mentioned, well, as this kind person picked up in one of my previous episodes, I really, of all the chocolate, I love chocolate anyway. Who doesn't? Well, actually, I know one person who doesn't, but they're just a bit strange. It's the person I live with, but I don't think he can hear me. He's not a fan of chocolate. And if he has chocolate, it has to come from having been in the fridge for hours so that it's rock hard. It's beyond me. It really is. But anyway, leaving him aside, this lovely bar of Aero mint chocolate. And it was delicious. But both of those things accompanied, I don't actually need my glasses for this wonderful bag of mini rovings and a packet of needles and a needle holder. This viewer had tried their hand at felting in the past, and for whatever reason no longer does, but is now crocheting. And she had picked up that I had enjoyed or wanted to, picked up in that it was one of the things I wanted to do, and so asked if they could send me their remaining kit. So I obviously was delighted to receive it. Lots and lots of different colours, and I just wanted, I put it down and I can't find it now. Oh, there it is. And they'd also made this beautiful little tag that came with it. As you say, it just says thank you for the podcast, but just look at that beautiful flower, crocheted flower. I'm really touched by the work that went into that. alone, but just that sense that of appreciation for me sharing my thoughts and ideas with you all. And it was just really very touching. So having received the gift of the needle felting wool, sorry, I definitely have cat's hairs in my mouth. I'm sorry about this. I decided to buy a couple of things to assist with that, and the first was a foam block. I got this from Mason's, and it allows me then to stick my needles into the wool without damaging the surfaces below or hurting my hands, so that was quite important, a little bit. And a little book, because I'm one of those people, I always like to read the instruction manual before I play with the thing that's in the box. I'm a bit precious in that sense. So I bought myself this Beginner's Guide to Needle Felting by Susanna Wallace. Or Suzanne Wallace, is it? No, Susanna Wallace. And it has lots of little starter well, it takes you through the basic techniques of needle felting, excuse me, and then shows you how to use pipe cleaners and other things to produce legs and structure to items that you're making. And then it takes you through the process of making starter projects. So I will be doing that this week. Excuse me a second, I just need to sneeze. Sorry about that. I didn't think you wanted to hear me sneezing. So it will have occurred to a few of you that I'm recording this at 10 o'clock on a Monday morning. Why am I not at work? In fact, I have this week off work. The holiday year runs out at the end of December, and I still have 2 weeks of holiday to take, so, and plus 3 other days of time owed to me because I worked weekends previously in order to get some work done. So I'll be taking a week off again in December, and then I'll be taking hopefully the time off between Christmas and New Year, so that will give me a nice long holiday there as well. One of the advantages of living in a Christian country, and there are disadvantages, but one of the advantages of having an established church, of having no separation of church and state, is that half of our public holidays are actually the major religious festivals. So we have 2 days at Easter, Good Friday and Easter Monday, and we have 2 days at Christmas, being Christmas Day and Boxing Day. We also have New Year's Day, and in Scotland, New Year's Day replaced Christmas as the main feast for the year, because they were Presbyterian and therefore much more puritanical Protestant than Anglicanism was, and so they abolished the pagan festivities of Christmas and transferred them all to New Year, which is why in Scotland they have 2 days off at New Year rather than just the one. So they have a bigger celebration of the New Year than Christmas. Anyway, that's all by the by, but it does mean that I only have to take 3 days off at Christmas to get a full week of leave, because we get 2 bank holidays on Christmas Day and Boxing Day, and then we've got 3 days in, and then we've got the weekend at New Year's Day. So it's quite a long 10-day holiday for only 3 days of leave. So that's quite nice when it works out like that. So I'm off this week, and I'll be off again in December. But in December, I'm planning to be up in Salford, so that to be with my mother and brother, but also so that my brother can attend his work's Christmas party, which he'll be able to do if I'm there, because he knows that he can leave my mother safely in my care and not worry about it and just go off and have a good time for the evening. So that's part of what we're planning to do. And hence why I'm able to go to Reading with Bob and Wendy tomorrow, and Bob is able to go because Bob works shifts, and so happens to be off on Tuesday. He works 5 days in 7 because he's a driver at the bus company as well, which is how I met them in the first place. Well, how I met Bob, and I met Wendy because they're neighbours. Sorry, there's just a bird, and it's caught Bunty's attention. Anyway, that was, as ever, me going off on a tangent, but there we are. So, acquisitions. So I wanted to say thank you very much for that lovely gift of the needle felting wool, and I will be taking part in that with some gusto in the next few days, I'm sure. I received another gift. You may remember I bought myself, actually I don't know my glass, if I have them in my hands I put them on. You may remember I bought myself this lovely walnut drop spindle, and I bought myself a Craftsy course in drop spindling, from fluff to stuff, I think it's called, with she has a remarkable name. It's Drusilla Penny. I can't remember her name, but it's a remarkable name, and it's one of those lovely kind of names you wouldn't quite believe somebody had until you've actually seen them on the TV. And I just love those distinctive names that people have. And I can't remember her surname. And is it Drusilla? No, it's not Drusilla. Drusilla is something else. Oh, what is her name? It'll come to me. Anyway, so I've had this since I bought this. I think I bought it for myself just before my birthday, and I haven't got round to actually doing any drop spindling yet. Well, a friend had forgotten it was my birthday in September and was in ever such a panic, and had watched one of my videos, saw that I'd bought myself a drop spindling kit, and so bought me another one. Which, of course, is fine, because actually having more than one drop spindle is not such a bad thing. And this one, I think, is made from beech. And the wall, WHORL, this is known as a top wall spindle, but I was looking at the Etsy page where this was bought from, and in fact, because of this lip on the top here, this is also a bottom wall spindle, so it will work either way, which is very nice to know, because it's apparently a lot easier to learn with a bottom wall spindle. You need to have a lot more control if you're going to use it at the top, which makes sense, because this is much more balanced, a more stable equilibrium, we might say, in mathematics, whereas this is more likely to topple and be off balance, and therefore presumably would be more difficult to give an even spin to whatever you're spinning. And with the lovely wall came 2 packs of roving, this lovely cream, which is it's beautiful cream, together with this lavender. So I'm in two minds as to how to do this, really, whether I should do it as a kind of self-striping spin, or to spin some, they're both 50 grams, whether I should spin 2 lots of each colour and then just two-ply the lavender and 2-ply the cream, or whether I should mix the lavender and cream rather like the wool, like this, so that you get a cream with a lavender speckle. And Bob has just sent me a message on Facebook asking me what's happened to the podcast. Well, I'm in the middle of recording it, Bob, is what's happened to it. So I should possibly explain why I'm recording it today and not Saturday. And as ever, so just to finish that was a lovely gift, so I'm very grateful for that. So I've got 2 lots of spindles to play with, so that will be interesting to see what I can come up with. And I hope to do some of that this week as well, because I want to give some time to watching the videos, and I wish I could remember her name. It's either Drusilla or Candida. I can never remember. I watch so many videos, I can't remember people's names, and I'm sorry for that. I'll put it in at the bottom. I think that's probably the easiest way to solve this particular riddle. But she does have a wonderful name, and you'll see when I've put it in. Anyway, so why didn't I record this on Saturday? Well, unfortunately, so Andy's boys Their mother's father, so their maternal grandfather, was taken to hospital suddenly on Saturday morning because of a heart incident. It was unclear whether he'd had a heart attack or a stroke or any other cardiac issue. And so the boy's mother wanted to be with her mother at the hospital, which is entirely understandable. And so Andy unexpectedly had to take the day off work and have the boys over. And because of that, the whole Saturday thing just got rather knocked out of kilter. And then yesterday, the boys went back home because their grandfather is back home, in fact, and it appears not to have been a desperately serious matter, and it's something that can be dealt with medication, diet, and he'll recover quite well, so that's positive. But I already had other things planned for yesterday, so I wasn't able to record yesterday either, so that's why I'm recording today. So, Bob, what happened? Life got in the way, but here it is, so I hope that's reassured everybody that all is well. Excuse me, I've just poured myself another cup of this lovely gingerbread tea. There we go. I'm using my Ginger Tom teapot. Oops, excuse me, and the matching cup. So, excuse me a second. It's so peculiar. I love gingerbread, and that just tastes like gingerbread. Anyway, I've said that before, so we'll move on. So I have a number of other acquisitions. How the Mintero came up in the topic previously was our new shake shop in Abingdon, which is a fabulous little cafe, tea room, Willow's Shake Shop, and my first shake in there was the Mintero, which was delicious. I went in the other day, again. I had a purpose for going in, but I had their Reese's Cup milkshake. And again, it's just, I love peanut butter. So Reese's Cups, Reese's Pieces, all those Reese's things are delicious anyway. And in a milkshake, they're just taken up a notch. Aero is still my favourite, but Reese's Pieces and Reese's Cups come a close second. In fact, a friend at work is able to get Reese's Pieces in a giant cup from her local supermarket, so she supplies me with my fix every so often. So that's quite nice. But my reason for going into Willow's Shake Shop, put my teeth back in, Willow's Shake Shop, is because on the 5th of December, I should explain, Willow's Shake Shop is the shop next door to Mason's Wool Shop, so my two favourite haunts right next door to each other. Not a very happy combination because it's very tempting now. But I noticed on Facebook that Masons were having a joint event with Willow's on the 5th of December, a Christmas crochet class for intermediate crocheters, and I guess I'm an intermediate crocheter. So I signed up for the event, and it's going to be a group of us, obviously, and we will be having cakes and shakes and coffees whilst crocheting. We can either choose to crochet Christmas socks, or a Christmas hat, or Christmas baubles. And I'm torn between doing the baubles and doing the socks, because I've already got the hats. I've made myself a knitted hat, courtesy of Claudia, of Crochet Luna, and I'm in process of crocheting a hat, which I don't want to talk about yet until I finished it, so that won't appear until a future episode, even though it's a work in progress that you haven't seen yet, but I don't want to talk about it just yet. I want to see if it works first, so but that will be a crochet hat. So I've not tried crocheting socks yet, and it may be an opportunity to do that. And I think I probably will do that, because I should imagine that my ability to make amigurumi means that crochet baubles are actually quite straightforward, because they are presumably made from magic ring, increasing outwards and then decreasing again, which I've done in terms of little people, as it were. So my instinct at this moment in time is to go down the line of the crochet socks, So I will let you know which I do, but that was my reason for going into Willows. And of course, because I was at Willows, it would be rude not to go next door, really. And plus, and this is where, I'm sorry, Claudia, I do have to blame Bob and Wendy here. It is their fault, and I'm not sure who gets the most blame here. It was Bob who succumbed to the pressure from Wendy, but it was Wendy who told him to tell me that they had new cakes in. And of course, if they've got something new for me to see, I've got to go and see it. So you can pay your money and take your choice as to whether we blame Bob or Wendy for this one. Bob was weak and pathetic, but then he's a married man, so, you know, this is what happens to a man when he marries. He does as he's told, basically, because life is simpler that way. But it was Wendy that kind of set the scene in the first place. So I think, Wendy, you probably take the edge on this one. But I have to thank you at the same time, because the cakes in question are the Batik Swirls by Stylecraft. Now, Stylecraft have had a line called Batik, which is a kind of stone-washed yarn in these various different colours, but they've now decided to produce them as a cake, combining the various different colours into a single self-banding yarn. And they had a lovely reds and purples one, which I really also liked, but this one was the one that really, really took my eye. I just love the colours in here, and I can't wait to get going on this. And what I'm going to be making with this are some crocheted pillow forms, pillow covers rather, for pillow forms. I've found a mock cables pattern on Ravelry, and I meant to print it out and I forgot, but I'll put in the bottom here what the pattern is, and you can go and have a look on Ravelry yourself. And I've downloaded the pattern and I've looked at it, and I'm really quite excited to get going. And I think because these are bands of colour, but not solid, they're tonal colours, which I really like anyway, I think it will really lend itself well to defining the mock cables, which are basically using front and back post treble crochets, double crochets in the US. It seems to be the broad outline of how it's making it. So this was this is a how much is it? It's 200 grams, and it's 80% acrylic, 20% wool. And Stylecraft's acrylic is really soft anyway, but with the addition of the 20% wool, it makes it really very soft. Not the cheapest item. This cost about £10, but I think is well worth it. There was another cake that they hadn't yet unpacked, which will be probably a purchase in future. I know I'm going to, so let's just be honest, and that will be my own fault. I'll blame myself for this one, Claudia, so it is my fault. The next one I buy will be because I have decided to go back and get this, and I'll talk more about that when it appears. But it looked in the pack almost like the chenille, like the Flutterbee, that very thick, chunky, or super chunky yarn. But in fact, it's a DK because it's a thin strand of yarn with lots of feathering coming off it on one side. I will demonstrate it more when I've actually bought one, but I'm really looking forward to getting cracking with this. It just feels so nice. So hopefully this will be a work in progress that will start to build up very quickly. I've got lots and lots of pillow forms, so it's a case now of making the covers for them to go in. So that was the end result of going into Mason's, but as I say, the real purpose was to go to Willow's Shake Shop to sign up, and it's a wonderful local business. It's a husband and wife who, she looks after the baking and the shakes and the smoothies that are available there, and he is a wood turner and carpenter, and he makes the furniture which is for sale. Sorry, not for sale. It's a shabby chic style of furniture, so slightly distressed looking, but with a real chunkiness about it, a very rustic look about it, and it's really nice furniture. So if you are in Abingdon-on-Thames at any time, do pop in there. It's a really, really good shop, and I can thoroughly recommend their products. Not least of which, and you'll notice that they're half gone, are these lovely hard candies, rhubarb and custard, which I've always loved rhubarb and custard. They're not good for my teeth, but they are delicious. And as you can see, they have a rather nice, attractive label that they make from their own. So it's a lovely shop. I can thoroughly recommend it, and it's very bad for me. I justify the shakes in that they'll contain lots of milk and cream, and therefore it's lots of calcium, and as I get older I need more calcium in my diet. We don't want any side effects from osteo, this or that or the other, so excuse me a second. I know I'm not really convincing myself either, but it's a good excuse, and so we'll run with it for the time being. Another acquisition which isn't really for me, well, it isn't for me at all. I made the mermaid blanket, you may remember, for my great niece Charlotte, and this will be going up north to her for Christmas. I decided to hold on to it because I wanted to buy some books to go with it. She wanted it in pink. Well, she doesn't know what it is, but she will have wanted it in pink when she gets it. And I asked for some advice, and I was given a tip about Emily Winsnap, who is a girl who is part mermaid, and by Liz Kessler. And there are actually 6 books. This is the first 3 in a single edition, and so I bought her all 6 books. I'm sure she's going to love them, so I flicked through, and I can see that it's well written, and I'm sure she's going to love. Absolutely. She's a girl after my own heart, though. She really dislikes the spines of books being broken, so she reads very carefully without pulling the pages back, which is exactly how I read. So it's quite nice that runs in the family. There's no direct connection, as it were. She's not seen me reading, but it's nice that we have the same thing. But the final, I think this is my final, well, no, not quite, but nearly. I bought myself a book stand. I have been wanting to get one of these for a while, and I just thought, do you know what, there's no reason I haven't got one. The great thing about this is it allows me to read whilst I am knitting, so I can just prop the book up and read, turn the pages. It's actually a cookbook stand, but I mean it works for hardbacks as well, and for normal books, that is. It's made from bamboo, so it's very light. And, well, I mean, it does exactly what it says, and it's, you know, it's adjustable, so you can have it laid flat, or you can have it standing vertical. It's got these lovely page marks, so which are springy, so it holds the pages in place so that they're not springing open. Really just very pleased with that. It's nothing much to shout about, but it's what it is. Excuse me. Oops, a daisy. Sorry. My final, let me just pick that up, Toby. There we go. There's a good boy. Whoops, a daisy, sorry. There we go. Let's put those there. There we are. These are acquisitions, but they're not quite just acquisitions. So, Create and Craft magazine. It's always nice to have. Is this the latest one? Yes, it is. Lots of tips and ideas, but obviously it's a catalogue for what they're selling as well, but I always find nice bits and pieces in here. So that's a magazine that's arrived recently, and then my my knitting and crochet magazine, which comes with the yarn to enable me to make these fantastic penguins, and I think I'm going to have to. Although I quite like the Christmas bunny. I mean, I've never thought of rabbits as being Christmassy, but he's wearing a kind of Christmassy jumper, a Scandi style, Fair Isle style patterning on the jumper, although it's a single emblem rather than all the way round. And then my Simply Knitting magazine. And Simply Knitting is probably the reason why I will be making the socks because if I can find it, no, I've lost it again. Do you know, it took me ages finding this before, and I've put it down. I can't remember where I've put it now. Does it have it on the front cover? I think it does. No, it doesn't. Isn't that weird? Well, with this edition of Simply Knitting magazine, comes a pack with instructions for making Fair Isle Christmas baubles. I'm just wondering if I can see it, but I've put it down and I don't know where I've put it, so I can't show you the pattern. In fact, there are 3 different patterns and you can choose which one to make, obviously. No, it's not there. I don't know where it is. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. But basically, I want to try my hand at Fair Isle, and it just seems that these miniature Fair Isle patterns for the baubles might be a good way into that, because I may then make some Fair Isle gloves or hats or socks even. And then, I don't know why I suddenly got this, but this came in the post, which is Love Crochet, Love Knitting, and it's 5 free patterns for each. I must have signed up for something, I guess, but it's got some patterns in there, and obviously they're selling yarns. I tend not to buy my wool online because with Masons round the corner, if I want to have an independent shop like Masons available for me to go and buy things, then I need to support them. There is a direct causal relationship between people buying online and local high streets losing all their independent shops. And yes, there may be occasions when Masons can't get something, or when something is incredibly cheap because it's been put on an incredible special offer that you'd be a fool not to take up. But in the ordinary run of things, I don't like to buy yarn online. I tend to buy needles online because Masons stocks a particular group of needles which I don't particularly like, which are plastic. And I like the special sets that I've bought, the zings, for example, which they don't sell there. And so it's a case of picking and choosing where you choose to buy things. But as I say, if you have a local store and then you don't use that shop for your regular purchases, then they're not going to be there when you do want them. So it's a case of use it or lose it, I guess. So having said that, I'll look through this. There may be special offers for things that simply aren't available at Masons. Probably not, but it will be worth a look, and the patterns are free, so that's quite nice. I still buy patterns through Masons as well, more to support them than anything else, rather than buying them online. So there are certain patterns from things like Tin Can Knits, which I will buy online because they're not available from Masons, but I won't buy Sirdar or Starcraft patterns online. I will buy those in the shop, because then Masons gets the revenue to support their business. So that's all of my acquisitions. I want to talk a little bit about my friend Naz. It was his birthday a couple of weeks ago, and I gave him a ball of a cake, rather, one of the candy swirl cakes, which his daughter wants to make, to knit some stuff from, so that's good. And I gave him the Star Wars crochet set with some extra wool and some extra hooks, and really pleasingly, his son wants to learn how to crochet with him to make those. So I'm going to be he's been away since his birthday. He went to Mecca with, I think it was Mecca. Yes, he went to Israel at the beginning of the year. So he's been to Mecca with a group of friends, and he's due back today, in fact, so he'll be back at work tomorrow. So next week I will be teaching him how to crochet, and then he'll be teaching his son, and they'll be making these lovely Star Wars characters. So I'm going to be making my Yoda this week, and I just think these mini Hanks are so adorable. So Yoda is mostly green with a light brown jacket with dark brown accents, I think, or the other way around. I can't remember now. I'm sure it's a light brown jacket. Yes, it's the Jedi jacket. So it's a light brown jacket with dark brown accents. And I'm not going to try, because do or do not, there is no try. For those of you who know The Empire Strikes Back, rather. And I will be making it so that I can then help Naz and his son to make theirs. And I hope to be making more of these, so I will be getting to grips with some of these little... The nice thing about these amigurumi is they're only small, so they're very quick projects, so I can make a couple of these in a couple of days and in between other things, and it will be fun to do those. So I'm really pleased that his son wants to learn. His daughter, I think, is 9, so his son is 11. And I'm really pleased that he wants to learn. So, and Naz is quite pleased as well. So I'll be teaching Naz, and Naz can teach his son. So I'm spreading the love, as it were. The crochet world is gaining 2 more men into its ranks. So that's basically it in terms of all my acquisitions and what things I'm making. I'm sorry, I'm just loving this jumper. I'm really I'm pleased with it. What are you doing, Toby? Yes, I don't know what you're doing either. Never mind. It's funny how they get themselves into these scrapes and then can't quite figure out how to get themselves out of them again. There we are. So, I've talked in the past about... Sorry, I've no idea where I was going with that then. Oh, recommendations. There we are. Yes. Sorry, my mind went completely blank. I've talked in the past about The Walking Dead and the different civilizations that are reinvented after the zombie apocalypse hits. And the current series has left me a little cold in that it's been mostly fighting. And I get it, they're at war and this is what happens when you're at war, but I'm finding it rather tedious in some respects. However, it's beginning to pick up again. The most recent episode, I'm talking about last week's, because in the UK we're 1 day behind the US, so I've not seen this week's episode that I think was broadcast on Fox yesterday in the US and will be broadcast on Fox in the UK later today. But last week's episode, really... we began to see a little bit more about the motivations of the kingdom in particular, which has always been a slightly odd idea, because in many ways the Negans of this world, the baddies, are how Saxon Viking kingdoms, which produced the medieval and therefore the modern kind of nation states that we now have, they grew out of that kind of violent protectionism, really, that Negan specialises in, and that Rick and his allies in the kingdom and the hilltop, and presumably also the river, the beachside community that appeared last series that we've not heard about since, but even the refuse community that double-crossed Rick at the end of last season. Negan's is in many ways more authentic as the origin of our modern societies, and is very reminiscent, if you like, of the kind of gangland culture that begins with Prohibition but which extends into modern times in the US and in Central and South America as well, largely speaking, and in certain parts of European cities as well, although less pronouncedly so in European countries, I think, because there is a much more defined nation-state identity going back many, many more centuries, perhaps. So it'd be interesting to see how these civilizations, like the kingdom, survive in the brave new world of, I mean, presumably Negan is going to lose at some point. And so his culture is either going to be completely wiped out, or the people who have lived under Negan are going to have to live in the brave new world of post-Neganism. Sorry if I'm being rather vague about this, but we're at a rather vague stage in the development of the series, and it could go in a number of different directions. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm still enjoying The Walking Dead, even if I'm finding the warlike shoot-'em-ups rather pedestrian and rather... I don't pay as much attention during those parts of the episode, perhaps, as I could, or maybe should. And it may be that rewatching them in a binge-like way will produce that effect. But there is a program, and I think it's on Sky Atlantic, which is The Good Doctor. And it's about a young man who is autistic, but savant-like autism. So he is a brilliant mind, but has real difficulty in the human relationship side of life. And it's Freddie Highmore, whom many of you will remember from Bates Motel, which was the kind of prequel to Psycho, the movie. But was also, I think, was also a child actor in a number of major films. I think was in Nanny McPhee, wasn't he? Or am I confusing him for somebody else? Was he Charlie in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory? He's been in a number of films as a child, but he's developed into a very accomplished actor. And it's a really interesting drama, really. I mean, it's not profound. He's obviously a good guy. He's obviously going to improve, but it's an interesting examination of how we are very dismissive of people who are different. And certainly in the first episode, where he is being brought in as a surgeon in this hospital, and there is a profound reaction against him by the established administration of the hospital at the highest levels, so the board, with the senior surgeon, chief surgeon, and all that kind of person present, and the president, and so on and so forth. The parallels between the arguments against him and the arguments against blacks and the arguments against women being in these professions, and it's throwing up some interesting challenges to our presuppositions that because somebody is different, therefore they're less capable. Whereas the argument that's being presented, I guess, is that they are as capable but in different ways. And maybe it's not the individual that has to change to settle into the society, but society that has to change in order to be able to absorb the differences. And in some ways, it's the flip side of the coin from the whole Walking Dead scenario, where Rick's band of merry followers are trying to force the Neganites into their understanding of what society should be, whereas in The Good Doctor, the exact opposite is the idea that society has to itself embrace more. And it may be that because in Rick's world, society is short and life is brutal, and you don't have the extra capacity to be able to cope with difference. Perhaps. So there are some interesting ideas that are being thrown up in these two programs, but I thoroughly recommend The Good Doctor. It's very well written, it's very well acted, the characters are believable and relatable. Even the character, the central character with autism, although you don't relate to him, which is interesting given that his character has difficulty relating to others, it is very difficult to relate to a character that has difficulty relating to others. There's still, I guess what we're being encouraged to assume is a paternalistic care approach to the character. which in some ways flies in the face of the ideal that the program itself is trying to express. So it'll be interesting to see how that in itself also develops as the program goes on. It's only on episode 4 at the moment. I've been watching it for the last 4 weeks, but I thought I'd throw it out there for those of you who maybe are looking for another program to get in on the ground floor with. This is series 1, first 4 episodes, very high production standards, interesting, and it'll be interesting to see where it takes us. So I think probably I'm coming up to the hour-long point at this stage. Having stopped the video to have a sneeze, I'm not exactly certain where I am, but I think I'm coming up to the hour point. So I'm hoping that my normal Saturday schedule will be resumed. Having said that, this Saturday, Salford City, which is the non-league local team that from just around the corner from where my mother lives, are playing in the FA Trophy, which is the FA competition below the level of the FA Cup. So it's the kind of lower leagues and non-league FA Trophy. Salford City are playing Brackley Town, and Brackley Town happen to be second in the league to Salford City at this moment in time, and Brackley is not that far from Abingdon. Northamptonshire is just up the M14 along the A43 from where I am now, so it would be it's a match I could go and see quite easily. So I may go next Saturday to see Salford City against Brackley Town, give some support to my local side whilst they're playing down here. But if I don't, then I'll be podcasting on Saturday. Otherwise, I'll be podcasting on Sunday. I hope to have a lot more to show you next week of things I've actually done, because I do have a week of not being at work, and I'm feeling a lot more energized this week and a lot better since I think this infection in my ear or my sinuses has gone. So until next week, stay happy, stay safe, keep crocheting, and I will speak to you all again soon. So until then, bye for now.